Hi, Danville. Alan Schultz here, Chief of Police with the town. And we are 10-8 and in service, which means we're here to make people's lives better by safeguarding the lives, rights, and property of everyone we serve. Appreciate your patience. We were a little late today. Sometimes police work gets in the way of putting this on, but we always want to make sure that we're out here for all of you. And to be completely transparent, what it was I was actually at court today. So believe it or not, even the chief actually goes out and does police work from time to time. And I'll kind of start off this show with that story, but I want to remind everybody, this is a live show. So if you have questions, go ahead and ask them in the chat. I will monitor both the Facebook chat and the YouTube chat, and I will work to get answers to the questions live during the show. If I can't, I'll answer them in the chat afterwards. All right, so yeah, I was at court. So back in February on the 16th, we had a burglary. So we had someone that broke into a home, took some things. I did cover it on the show. I said we have leads and we're doing follow-up. And the very next day, that person had come into town and had ultimately we ended up getting into a pursuit, and we chased him, and our detectives did an excellent job of following up in the case. And we were at court today, and I was involved in that pursuit, so I was in court as well, and had to be there because that's part of the process. We always kind of joke in our Citizens Academy. We talk about, you know, what you see on TV is one thing, and crimes look like they can be solved in 42 minutes, and that's it. But once we make that arrest, once we take that action, there's the report, there's the filing with the DA's office, and then there's the testimony in court. So a lot of things happen with that. So I spent the day in court working on that and testifying, and so even the chief of police from time to time does good old-fashioned police work. Not as good as our detectives, but still out there doing it. All right, so I do have some reminders. We do have our Citizens Academy, so if you're interested in what it is that we do, and we give a very detailed look in our Citizens Academy, it's starting March 22nd, so it's starting 1 week from today. We did have a couple of people drop out, so there is space available. So if you're interested and you've got a friend, go ahead and do that, and we can get you in. So we do have space. There is a link in the description below, so you can sign up for that, and we can get you and any friends or family. So we've had parents join with loved ones, and it's actually a really good time. This will be the first time we're doing it in our new building, so come join us. It is a good time. The big announcement, and we're banging the drum on this one because it is going to be a huge inconvenience for everybody, is the town is going to be closing Diablo Road between Alameda Diablo, and Avenida Nueva. And that's going to be between March 23rd, April 13th. If you want information, you can go to our Danville Town Talks page. There's a link in the description. And you can actually enter your email address into the Stay Informed box, and you'll get email blasts as project updates come in for that particular project. Here is the map that shows the culvert that's being repaired, which is causing the road to fail, and that's the reason we're doing this emergency repair. And we tried to time it with the spring breaks for some of the local schools to try to minimize some of the impact to the community, but we realize it is a total road closure 24/7, all lanes. So it is going to be impactful. So if you're coming to or going from the Blackhawk area, we're recommending that you go around the Communitas and use that section. All right, so I'm going to look at some of this. So I got, and if I mispronounce your name, I apologize. Jacques says, I was almost T-boned on Danville Boulevard at Hemi. So I'm going to cover that later on in the show and talk about what it is that we do and frankly, what it is that we don't do and why. All right, so nothing more here. All right, so some of our other reminders, download this FEMA All Hazards Guide. If you had your power shut off like I have and it's still off, there are some tips in here that talk about power outages and what you can do. We're highlighting the wildfire because that is what because that's what we're coming up to. And you can have tips on how you can be prepared should a wildfire happen, what you can do during it, and then how to stay prepared and recover from the event should it occur. The wildfire preparedness and evacuation guide is on our sheriff's website. You can download that as well. And you can also, while you're there, sign up for our community warning system. That, in addition to Nixle, are going to be the two ways that you're going to get information. Inside that wildfire guide, there's information on how to prepare your home, your property, your family, and believe it or not, your pets, right, for the potential that a wildfire would take place. I'll say this, from doing this show, and putting it on and going out and doing talks on emergency preparedness. I've got emergency food. We've got dry food storage. We've got, we have a few boys, so we always have a lot of food in the house anyway. But we've got special supplies of dried food. We've got water that's stored. So we've got big containers of water. Plus we have bottled water that we cycle that about every 6 months. And I also have a generator. So like right now, the power's out. I wasn't worried about losing my food because I just pop on the generator, plug it in, and I'm able to operate my water heater. I'm able to operate my refrigerator. I can unplug the fridge to do the microwave. I don't have a huge generator, so I do have to kind of manage that load. But there are alternatives. And so I would really suggest, if you are, as we're getting into this wildfire season and potential for these PSPSs, for me, this is a very good reminder of things that I need to tune up in my own preparedness kit and make sure that I have planned. And if you've got special needs, or you've got a family member that's got special needs, maybe you need insulin to be cooled or whatever it may be, what is your backup plan? And then what's your backup plan to the backup plan? When I was a field training officer and I would train our police officers, kind of the joke is, when it comes to flashlights, if you've got two, you've got one. If you've got one, you've got none, right? So always prepare for the failure to happen, and then prepare for the next one. So me personally, I always had 3 different flashlights on or near me so that I did not want to be out at night and run out of light. And so that's a simple principle that applies to how we prepare our homes and our family. And everyone's household is different. My house is different than my neighbor's house. And so we want to make sure that we're not overlooking the differences that we have, and that we're preparing our families accordingly. All right, I'm going to look and see if there's anything in the chat before we go. I will cover the traffic issue that was mentioned. So Lou says, Chief, at the State of the Town presentation at Crow Canyon today, you were recognized and thanked for all you do and your crew do. And Lou, I appreciate that. I actually wanted to be there. That's one of my favorite things. It's a great show. I love that the chamber puts it on. I love that the mayor gets up and addresses people in attendance and tells them what it is that's going on. But I was at court, so I'd planned to actually be there, but unfortunately I was stuck in court all morning long. So Sue says, will be interesting how they are going to handle the food that will be going bad in the fridge or freezer. I don't have a generator. Okay, so Sue, the advice, if you don't have a generator, is get a cooler, go down to Lucky, Safeway, wherever they're selling ice, put the ice in there. Usually, especially in these colder months, you can get a good day out of a cooler full of ice, and you can save your meat. So we would recommend doing that, and that can help that. So yeah, and then frankly, if you have a friend that's nearby, our power outage is very very small, and so it's not that we have a lot of homes, like 1,000 homes that are affected. But I know that there's people across town that you may be able to reach out to if you have a friend that has power. And so kind of maybe if we work together on that, we can do that. All right, let's look at crime. So communitycrimeapp.com, this is where you can go and you can look at crime. We upload there frequently, several times a day. And we also put, they put sexual offender registry information on there. And you can set up alerts to get those alerts straight to your home. So let's take a look at traffic. Not a really good week for traffic at all. We had 2 injury collisions, 2 property collisions, and then 3 hit-and-run collisions. There was on the 6th, there was a non-injury hit-and-run collision on the 1800 block of Camino Ramon, and the fact is that was actually a car into a mailbox, and the car fled. So the evidence of the collision was the mailbox itself. On the 9th, there was a non-injury collision on Camino Tassera and Holbrook Drive. On the 11th, we actually had 4 collisions. We had a non-injury hit-and-run on the 300 block of La Cuesta. We had a non-injury collision on the 3100 block of Stone Valley Road. That's up by Monte Vista High School. We had an injury collision on Camino Tassera at Old Orchard, and we had an injury collision on the 300 block of Diablo Road. The injury collisions on the map that you're looking at are going to be the ones in yellow. The non-injury collisions, whether they're hit and run or non-injury, are going to be the ones in green. On the 12th, we had a non-injury hit and run on the 200 block of Jasmine Way. All right, back to the crime. So for the crime blotter, 6 to 12, not a great week, but not a terrible week either. We had a bike that was stolen from a porch on the 300 block of Greenbrook Drive on the 7th. Again, on the 7th, we had property that was stolen from an unlocked car on Barrett Circle. On the 8th, we had property stolen from a locked vehicle on the 800 block of Sycamore Valley Road. So that's kind of over there by the livery. On the 9th, we had a catalytic converter that was taken from a Toyota Skoda on the 300 block of West Linda Mesa. On the 11th, a GMC pickup was stolen from Everett Drive, and then it was later recovered in Oakland, and it was stripped. It was a partial strip. And it looks like it might be related to an attempted vehicle theft on Pinecone Drive, the same evening. So it looks like those might be related. All right. Let me see if there's any questions. I'm going to check the chat. As always, if you have questions or comments, put them in there. I will cover the lights out shortly. All right. I don't see any questions in the chat. All right. So we had trees that were going down. We had power lines that were going down. Yesterday was very, very chaotic, right? There were some points where as the trees were coming down, they were coming into power lines, shutting power down. At one point, there was a tree along the Iron Horse Trail south of Paraiso that had caught fire. And I tell you, I can never give enough kudos to the San Ramon Valley Fire Protection District. They were out there. They put the fire out. They blocked the trail. And this was, I don't know, maybe an hour before school was going to get out from John Baldwin. And so they're great partners in the community. They just do a very good job at what they do. So kudos to them. They do excellent work. But we had a lot of trees going down. I was listening to the radio. I was out there helping with some of the issues. I'll tell you that there were other areas on our same channel that were getting a lot more trees that were going down. And I do have to think that some of that might be because Danville has been doing some preventative maintenance on some of the trees recently in cutting down some of those trees. If you remember back on Comunidad Sahara, the town was pretty assertive in taking down trees that were likely to fall should there be another weather-related event. And so that is not a police department thing. That is a town thing. That is the town staff getting together and doing that and doing it very efficiently. Okay, so what happens when the power goes out to an intersection? What can we expect to see? Well, Andy Dillard is one of our transportation managers, and he has done a good job of outfitting our lights with backup batteries. And so most of our lights, and I don't know all of the ones, but most of our lights, if not all of them, have backup batteries. And what'll happen is when the power goes out, they'll continue to run on that backup battery. And sometimes Andy will go out, and what he'll do is he will turn the signal so that it just flashes red. And what that's meant to do is if there's a temporary power outage for a couple hours, what Andy has told me, what he told me yesterday was it usually lasts for maybe 3 to 4 hours. And then frankly, the batteries just run out. At that point, what is the driver's responsibility? So the driver's responsibility when you come to an intersection is to follow Vehicle Code Section 21800D1. It requires drivers to stop when approaching intersections with traffic signals that are not working. This is the cooperative nature, right? This is where we rely on all of you to do your best to follow the rules and be safe. Here's the thing. Think about, and the example I want to use is a special event. We have the Devil Mountain Run every year, right? That is one of the most well-organized events. Mr. McCrary and the team that organize that, they are some of the best organizers. I enjoy the event as a participant. I enjoy it managing public safety because they do such an excellent job. But if you've ever been in that or ran that or seen it, you know that what happens is on the 10K course, it crosses Comunidad Sahara, or rather Sycamore, at Camino Ramon, right there at the Iron Horse Trail. And so we have to stop traffic and direct traffic right there. In order for me to take an intersection as busy as Comunidad Sahara and Camino Ramon and use staff to control the intersection, it takes anywhere between like 5 and 6 staff members. It's not just one person sitting in the middle of the intersection, holding up the stop sign, waving this traffic on, holding the stop sign here. That is absolutely unsafe. It's unsafe for the drivers. It's unsafe for the person standing in the middle of the intersection. I know from my experience that we've had officers that we've worked with in our jurisdiction, and when I say that, I mean the county, that have been hit by cars trying to direct traffic. and it's career ending. It's done. So if we are going to take over an intersection, the obligation for us as the police department is that we have to do it properly, and we have to do it with adequate controls so that it is controlled safely. We can't make the problem worse, so we can't just stick a stop sign out there. I know that sounds reasonable, like something would be better than nothing, but if we were to take and stick a stop sign out there and the power comes back on and now you've got cycling lights and the stop sign's still out there, that could result in confusion, which could result in a collision. Now, if I have to take 5 officers and dedicate them to one intersection, and remind all of you that during this time, we we had not just one, and we still have intersections that are out right now, right? But during the time yesterday and last night, we had several intersections that were out. And the fact of that is, I don't have the staff to go to each one of those intersections, because once we take over the intersection, we own it until the hazard's clear. And so we've got to stick with it. And I need to make sure that the officers are available so that when you call 911, someone is coming to your house in less than 5 minutes, like I promise our town council in our annual report. So I've got to make sure that our cops are available and we've got continuity of service in the town. And so that requires me, to do this every day. I rely on all of you to do what you can do and take part in making Danville safe. And so on a day-to-day basis, that means reporting crime when you see it. It means acting with regard for other people's safety. It means maybe when you're walking down the road that you're not staring at your phone as you cross the street, creating a hazard. It means that when you see someone do that, maybe you say, hey, look out. So it's all of our part. If I had to staff the police department in a way that was prepared to manage every single intersection and do all of those things because we were separate and apart from the community, I think it would be impossible. 2, it would be very, very costly. And that's why the model that we have in modern day law enforcement, really since the early 1800s, is one that's cooperative and consensual between the police and the public. It doesn't happen in a vacuum. And the fact is if those intersections become so hazardous where we think there's going to be continued accidents, we would treat it just like if there was a tree down in the road or power lines down in that intersection. We would just simply close the road, and at intersections preceding the affected intersection, we would probably just divert traffic. And so we go out to these intersections during these busy times and we assess whether or not there is some additional closures that are needed. And it's absolutely true that when those signal light goes out, it is less safe. I'm not saying that it's not equally safe. I'm not trying to imply that. Certainly when weather conditions change, when the street lighting conditions change, if a signal or a sign gets knocked over, all of those things will decrease the safety of that intersection. I'm not saying that I can bring it back to 100% as though that intersection is operational as designed. I'm saying that it's actually less safe, and I'm saying please act with caution, please act with care, and that the vehicle code does apply. We really have to drive slower. I know the signal light right near my house is out, and today when I was coming to work, I'll be honest, I saw people doing really good. And I know if I stood there for 20 minutes, I'd see someone run the sign. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but I saw people slow down. I saw people really taking their time and being patient. And I wasn't even in a cop car. I was just in a regular old car, and people were doing a good job. So I am seeing it. It's not that I'm not aware that there's not bad driving happen, but that is where we are. The issue is if we take over that intersection and we do a poor job at it. So in other words, we throw like a stop sign up and it's not visible and it doesn't work well, we create liability for the town. And frankly, that's all of you, right? That's us. And we don't want to put any of us in the position to increase the liability based on doing a poor job. And we want to make sure that we're available for those calls for service. All right, I'm going to check the chat for any questions. So Jacques, and I hope I'm not butchering your name. So I apologize. I know your Danville Boulevard in Hemi is a little north of Danville, but the same applies throughout the county. Usually you will not see, as we get these intersections that continue to fall, you're usually not going to see police officers posting up at these different intersections because it's just not practical. We would not have good continuity of service. And if you called 911, nobody would be coming. So we want to make sure that we're coming for you. Okay, I'm looking through the chat here to see if there's any. So Eric Parker said Concord Safeway was tossing thousands of pounds of beef today. They said that's not great. Eric also asks, some of the schools had power up, but internet down. Does DPD have access to the new cameras that went into all the schools, or does the district monitor those? Curious if they have a flying blind process when their physical security measures are offline. So, Eric, that's a great question. And the fact is, I'm just not going to answer it. We don't answer technical or strategic style questions that could compromise security. We know that we've got security measures in place. We know that we do site assessments. We know that we work with the school district, and we know the school district works hard on their physical security. And I know I broadly say school district. When I say that, certainly I mean the school district, but St. Isidore's, SRVCA, they have very good security plans in place. They're an engaged staff, and they do well as well. So, Eric, that's one of those questions that it would be inappropriate for me to answer. Lou, appreciate the kudos to our public works. I can't give them kudos enough. They do an amazing job. And then Laurel makes the comment, it was amazing to see how many peeps did not treat the signals out as full stops. And, we were talking about this, and I think there's and I'm not a psychologist, but I think there's a psychological reason. I think we get very used to and comfortable with signals and signs and all that, and we forget that we're supposed to be looking for the actual hazards. Right? If you're teaching a new driver to drive, what do you tell that person to look for? Certainly we're looking for signs and things like that. Usually what I'm saying is look for the things that you may hit and that also may hit you. And so that means that every intersection you come to, you're looking for cars that may come out. You're looking for people. You're looking for those things. And we should be looking, is this intersection, whether it's got a signal light, no signal light, or a stop sign or a yield sign, or it's a country road with nothing, is it safe for me to go through it? We should be doing that all the time. And I think what happens is, and frankly, this is kind of a kudos to Andy Dillard and his transportation team. They make Danville almost like this guided transportation tour where you can go through, and if you just follow the cues that they put in place, it is very, very safe. And I think that's reflected in our overall traffic accident rate, which we're actually going to cover as part of our annual report. So that's where I think that comes from. I think we get so used to having such good transportation and traffic calming measures in place that when they fail, it's really hard to then readapt to it. Kind of like if you've ever driven one of the cars with like adaptive cruise control or self-driving features, once they go, they do very, very well, and it reprograms your brain how the car is supposed to work. So then if you go to another car, you're relying on those features and they're not there. And so it becomes part of how we train ourselves to drive. So it's an interesting conversation. Okay, so Jacques says, and Jacques, correct me if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, because I want to keep going with Jacques. Jacques, honestly, with all the foliage, the signal lights aren't the easiest to see, so folks not familiar with Danville Boulevard may not notice. Jacques, that's a great, so this is the time of year where we will see those problems. And our maintenance team does go out, our transportation team does go out, and when they do check those lights. But if you see one in particular, go to Danville Connect. It's an app you can download online. We feature it maybe once every month or two on the show, but you can download an app, take a picture of the foliage that's covering the signal light or the traffic sign or whatever it may be, and just say, hey, this is a hazard. It needs to be fixed. And our transportation folks will let our maintenance team know to go out there and trim it back. And they do that all the time. And so that's a very good point, and I'll pass that on to both of those teams. But if you know of one, let us know, and we'll fix it. Sue says, it's crazy that not everyone knows you are supposed to stop and proceed with caution when the power is out, and you are not the only vehicle at the intersection. And so it's kind of really simple. If the lights are out, you just treat it like a stop sign. And they try not to put too many terms or exceptions rather to it. And so you're right. It just, let's make it simple and stop. Oh, Jackie. Perfect. Thank you. I'm going to commit that to memory. Thank you. So now I've got the right pronunciation for Jackie's name. All right. So Laurel says, I've seen lots of cars being pulled over this last week. Lots of PD presence. Great to see. I think we'll cover some stats that will bear that out. We have been putting some more things out on social media to show where we're doing some of the enforcement and what the violations are. And And Jackie, I know you say good to know. Thank you for the info on manning the intersections. It makes sense. I talked to the city attorney about this, and we talked with our traffic folks, and we we get in these creative holes where we're like, what if when it senses the power's out, could we have a stop sign that folds down? Just something to, in addition to. And so we're always thinking of something, but it really is a challenging problem because we would like to have that continuity, whether there's power, not power, whatever we can do. And so we're always trying to come up with some ideas on that. All right, I'm going to check YouTube real quick, see if there's no one on YouTube or no questions on YouTube. There are watchers. I appreciate you being there. All right, so we're going to go to the annual report. So this is our annual report. I give 4 reports a year. One of them is an annual, and the rest are simply updates. But this is a 32-page comprehensive report on what the police department has done, crime and traffic in the town. And it's a really good resource. In fact, I was talking to someone last night that was thinking about moving to Danville from the peninsula. I think she was Millbrae, and her partner was in San Francisco, and they were thinking about moving here to town. And so I was pointing them to, well, things like this show, but I was also saying, hey, this is a good source of information for what it is we do, how we do it, and you can get a good snapshot into the health of the department. So you can go, there is a link in the description. You can go right to it, and we will have it on our police chief's page where all of the past annual reports are there, or at least all for the last, I think we put 5 years worth up. All right, so let's look at collisions. And then I think it's, maybe apropos of what we've been talking about earlier, but let's look at the collision rate. You can see, and there's 2 numbers and 2 lines that are represented. The first one is the total number of collision, and the second one is the reports. And I'll flash that back up here in a minute, but I want to explain the difference between those two. The collision rate. If you call and say there's a collision, we don't always take a report. What I ask our officers to do is follow the CHP Collision Investigation Manual, which says that they will take reports if there is a fatal collision, if there's an injury collision, or if there's a dispute over fault in the collision, or if there's any crime associated with it. So we do take those reports. So when I report to council and I report to all of you our collision rates, I report both numbers, not just the ones we take reports on, but if we go out and you call and say, hey, there's a fender bender here, here's the accident, we're gonna count that as an accident. We don't just discard that. That's an accident. It happened, and so it's there. So that blue line and the total number of accidents, those are the ones that we pay closest attention to. And if you look, it's been on a downward trend for the last 20 years, and you almost touching the 500 number way back in the mid 2000s. And then it's been going down. And then, of course, in the COVID years, it went down a lot because our traffic rate was lower. So our collision rate went down as well because there were just fewer cars out on the road. And then in the last 2 years, it did creep up a little bit in 21. And we actually had, 2 fewer collisions in 2022. So we went from 232, so less than 1 a day, to 230 in 2022. And I'll be honest with you, I've worked here since about 2009. So I'm aware of this collision rate. And I did not think, 2014, we hit 304. And I thought that was the lowest we'd go. I didn't think we'd break 300. We broke it one time before 2018, and it just kept going down. So it's really shocking to me. But when I look at this, I don't think it's an effect of enforcement. I really think it's an effect on the safety of the roads, the engineering. So a lot of it is what Andy Diller and his team do in our transportation department to design the roads better. The example I always cite is if you go down in front of San Ramon Valley High School, that's a 25-mile-an-hour zone all day, right? It's not just a school zone, it's 25 all day. And if you look at the road, what Andy and his team did to reduce the speeding is they took the roadway width and they shrunk it, and they gave it what's called a road diet. So they made the road narrower, they put those kind of candy stripes on the side, and then you have the parking on the outside. What that does is that gives you a visual effect as though you're trying to thread your car through a narrower hole, and it causes you to want to drive slower because it's a tougher challenge. Then the reality is you still have the exact same roadway width, but the lines make it so it's tighter. And so that's a good example of what Andy does from a design standpoint that helps us out so that we don't have to do as much enforcement there. And then we can enforce more maybe on like Comunitas Sahara, right? And so it's a good example of how citations do help reduce collisions or reduce the violations that cause collisions. But roadway design, vehicle design, I know that my car, if I start to get too close to another car, it'll beep and blink at me and stuff, and sometimes even put the brakes on for me. So there's a lot of design things too that I think have helped to reduce those collisions as well. All right, let's look at some numbers that are pretty outstanding here. So if you look, when you compare our traffic stats to the last 10-year, or rather the 10-year average, we're down almost 20%. We're down 18% to 232 collisions in 22, down from a 10-year average. And this includes the 200 from the pandemic year of 281. On the hit and run collisions, this is where we're not doing well at all. In 22, we saw a 31.4% increase over the 10-year average of 35. So we went from a 10-year average of 35 all the way up to 46. So that's a pretty significant increase. On the injury collision, and this is one of the numbers that we try very hard to look at and see how we can affect change, because this is what impacts people's lives. When you get hit by a car or you hit another car and you are injured, that can have lifelong implications. So it's something we pay very close attention to. Essentially 2% with this number is statistically flat. Our 10-year average is 50, and we're sitting right down at 49. So it's statistically flat. We'd like to see it move lower, but we've seen it jump up and down anywhere from 10 to 15 from that 10-year average. So it is something that we do see go up and down quite a bit. All right, so on the citation rate, this is something that we get questions on a lot, like how many citations do you write? How do you determine how to do it? So when it comes to issuing citations, I don't go to our traffic officers and say, give me 10 citations a day. There's no quota, right? What I ask them to do is do an analysis, tell me where the collisions are occurring, what the cause of the collisions are, and then also fold in your complaints. So if there's complaints, I want to know where those complaints are occurring, but I also have to know where the collisions are occurring, what the cause is. So if it's speeding, if it's U-turn, turning violations, stoplights, stop signs, and the good old-fashioned cell phone is probably one of the worst ones that we can see, right? Because if you're on your cell phone and distracted, there's no pre-collision braking, and it's a full-speed crash. So we will work very aggressive to make sure that we work in those areas and for those violations. And what I don't want to see is I don't want to see an officer work an area for violations where we're not getting any complaints and not getting any traffic accidents simply because they're trying to log a stat, so to speak. We need to put our effort in an analytical way that affects change on the numbers that we want to see. So let's look at our citation rate. All right, so if you look pre-pandemic, we were floating just over 3,000, and as the pandemic hit, we cut that in about half, and then probably by, a quarter in 2021 down to 700. So that is a very low citation rate number. In 2022, so last year, we started pushing that back up. We're at 1922, and we're on pace this year so far. If we're only 2.5 months in, but we're on pace this year to push that number quite a bit higher as well. So our citations are going up, and we know that there is a relationship between the number of citations written and the collisions coming down. But we also know at some point you can write 3,500 tickets or you can write 6,000, and it's going to have a negligible effect. So we realize there's a ceiling on that. And the most important thing is that we focus our efforts in a specific area for a specific violation. All right, so Sue says, I reported to you on Danville Connect a stop sign blocked from plant overgrowth, and they got it trimmed in a day and a half. That was great. Well, Sue, I think you're setting us up for unreal times, because that's actually incredible, right? You report something on Danville Connect, and a day and a half later it's fixed. That's awesome. But I do hear that often. Their turnaround time is very good. Maintenance is awesome here. And Bob, thanks. I appreciate the congratulations to the traffic unit and the DPD. I think they are doing well, but really the kudos goes right back to the community, right? It's all of you taking the time to slow down, drive safe, and do those things that make Danville a safe place to drive. Sue asks, is anyone else getting texts and calls from PG&E with a recorded message saying nothing new? I have received 3 texts and 3 phone calls. So Sue, I don't actually sign up for them because I just proactively go out and check the website. So I can't really ask that. And Larry, so Larry has a good comment. He says, we love Bert and all of the volunteers. So I'm actually going to give you a sneak peek on this one only because you brought it up, Larry. So good job. Kudos to you. But I will talk about this on the last segment, so probably in 2 weeks. But look who is on the back cover of our annual report this year. And the reason you make the back cover is because you are the recipient of an award. This is Bert Feldstein's second time he has received the honor of being selected as Danville Police Department's VIP of the year. I don't know how he does it. He is a great representation of all of the volunteers that we have here. But Bert is an exceptional person, like all of our volunteers here, and he just works really hard. He's a good example. So if you don't know, what our volunteers do is they are members of the community that come to the town and decide to work and donate their time. And frankly, I think they do it in one of the most honorable ways that they can. They do it in service to all of you. And that's the great thing about being a volunteer for the police department is we don't have categories or criteria. Like we don't just help the kids or just help the adults. We don't just help you for 2 weeks, or there's no limit on it. It's those that need help get help. And so our volunteers that come here to help, they literally just help everyone. And what a great thing. And if you want to be a volunteer, what we'd ask you to do, come to our Citizens Academy. Starting next week. It's going to be 7 weeks long. It sounds like a long time. It's every Wednesday from 6 to 9, and we have 2 Saturdays that we throw in there. And it is very fun. So we actually go out, we bring our traffic folks in here, our investigators, we bring some of our SWAT team members so they can explain what it is they do, how they're trained, and then we bring you out to the range and let you drive the car, and then there's some force options simulator type stuff, so you get to be the police officer, see what kind of training that we receive, and then also have a perspective for how an officer must react and what our expectations for them are when they're in these varied situations. So it's a lot of fun. So we enjoy it. So Larry, I appreciate you bringing that up, and I appreciate that woohoo as well. All right, to remind everybody, Diablo Road is going to be closed. It is a permanent and hard closure, all directions, both directions, any which way, from March 23rd to April 13th. That road is not going to be open. So please have plans in place now for what you will do during that period of time. This is a road closure to do an emergency repair of a culvert that is causing the road to give way. It has to be done in order for that road to be serviceable. So please make plans according to those dates. We tried to align it with school breaks so that we could minimize the impact to the community, but this was the best and most immediate time that we could do it. So please help us by avoiding that area. So if you're coming from or going to the Blackhawk area, we're recommending that you use Camino Tasajera. Here you can see where the culvert is being repaired and the road closure. So please avoid that area. Go to our checklist, the all hazards checklist down below, and this is where you can download, print that thing out and store it. Also download the Wildfire Preparedness Guide and sign up for our Community Warning System alerts. Also make sure you sign up for Nixle. Send a text message to 888-777. So instead of sending it to, mom or dad or son or daughter, send it to 888-777 and just put your zip code in there, 94526. Hit send, and that's it. 10 seconds and you're signed up to receive alerts. So when we close the road, or like yesterday, we put one out saying there was a road closure. There's also trees and wires down, and gave you some safety tips on how to make sure that you're safe on the road. That's all there. Download those guides, though. I was grateful that I've been teaching and talking about emergency preparedness for so long. We've got a generator, so when our power went out, I fired up the generator, and the food's all good. So figure out what you can do to be prepared. There's a lot of good information in those guides. All you got to do is take a quick peek, look at them, do your own personal checklist, and then put them in the drawer, and let's have fun here in town. All right, I am looking for any other questions. I don't see any, so that means that we are 10:10, which means we're off duty, but we're always 10:8 and in service to all of you. Have a good night, Danville.